here, I think they should leave. I mean, you don't see Americans burning, Mexican flags. I mean,
that's right.
It just really bothers me. Actually, I look Hispanic is what's really interesting. I look Hispanic, but I'm 3/4 German and 1/4 American Indian. So working with the railroad, I work all over the country with a lot of different people. I actually build bridges, and I get to hear what people say. And when they talk about it, they just hear bullet points or what the media says. They don't really get to hear, like, the Hispanic judge was part of La Raza. They just hear what, CNN says, the little sound bite, and then they take it and run.
Well, it's just a talking point, because just like you said there, they hear the sound bite. It's almost like they're reading it off a cue card. It's just so formulated, and it's so copied by everybody else who's out there. You can tell they get read it off the same website, or we're watching the same broadcast. Thank you so much, Mike. We have to move on to our other callers. Let's go on now to Ben in California. Go ahead, Ben. Oh, on Ontario. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, hey. Good evening, guys.
Hey, how you doing?
Very good, very good. Happy to talk to you all. Great job from everybody from top to bottom. Really great job.
Well, thank you, and thank you for calling.
My question was sort of a situation and the result of that. Let's say it's early October. The election is going full force, and all of a sudden the FBI arrests Hillary. Now, does Bernie get on the ticket, or does Bill, can he go back on the ticket? What would happen then for the election?
I don't know about Bill.
I really don't know, but, I don't think that's a scenario that's going to happen. She can be, and I believe she is, clearly guilty of sin. And they have come after people like Thomas Drake, who is an NSA whistleblower. I've interviewed him. They came after him for nothing and tried to put him in jail. They're not going to come after Hillary. I think if they do come after Hillary, you're going to see Obama pardon her, or you're going to see something like that. But they are not. They may indict Hillary Clinton, but I don't think that they're going to convict Hillary Clinton. She's too big to jail, quite frankly, and that's the way our government works, and we understand what the corruption is. She's going to have to be defeated before we ever have a chance of convicting and jailing her. And that's why this is going to be a big race, because they're both in it. Their backs are to the walls. Donald Trump has to defeat her, or she is going to come after Donald Trump and destroy his life. And if she doesn't, if Donald Trump wins,
he's going to
put
jail.
Her in jail. Yeah, it's going to be the White House or the big house for Hillary. So this is a key election for them. Their back is to the wall, and he's not wasting any time. He's not sitting back and making some kind of a political calculation. Well, should I wait and release this information closer to the election so it has a bigger impact? No, he's going to have a press conference beginning of next week, and he's going to lay it all out there for the American people. All right, Hillary is the nominee. Let me tell you about who she is. And he's going to start defining her for a lot of these social justice warriors who don't know anything about it because they were in diapers the first time the Clintons were committing their crimes.
And also, when you talk about the timing, let's say the feds do come after her. I think if they really want to make a statement, this is a new, clean FBI that's going to go after true criminals, they come after her now. She just had this big nomination. She's out there shaking hands and kissing babies. They set her up and knock her down. If they were going to do it, I think now would be the time.
Yeah, and look at how many times they have been involved in just every kind of influence peddling and corruption and criminal activity and gotten away with it. I mean, literally getting away with rape and with murder and with allowing the standing by and being complicit in the murder of the people in Benghazi, for example. I mean, it goes on and on and on. The rap sheet for the Clintons is so long that he can start right now trying to define it, and he still won't be finished by the time we have the election in November. You know that?
That is true.
I think that after the press conference, there's going to be an earthquake across America from all the triggering. Everybody that's going to get triggered is going to cause an earthquake. Well, thank you very much, guys. I don't want to take too much time. I want to let everybody else talk.
Well, thank you for calling.
Evening, and it was great talking to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Ben in California. Now we're going to go to Ben in Wisconsin. Go ahead, Ben.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, how you doing?
Good evening, Mr. Jackson.
How you doing?
Thank you for taking my call. I know it's late. Mr. Knight, thank you for being a modern-day Edward R. Murrow.
Thank you. That's a nice compliment.
how ironic that Bilderberg is 48 hours away and Hillary is getting the nomination tonight, seeing as she broke the Logan Act last summer by attending Bilderberg. I just want to bring up, I don't know if this is off track, but the Premier Election Solutions, formerly known as Diebold, the electronic voting hardware.
Right.
If that's going to be how we vote this time around, who's to say that's, I mean, even going back to 2000 with Bush in Florida or Ohio, do you think that could be an issue coming up?
Yes. Just as we were saying before, you look at these states where it's close. We know that you have to win by a huge landslide before they will change things, before they won't change the results. And I think when you look at electronic voting, even that rule of thumb can go out the door, because you're talking about Diebold, but we've also got Smartmatic, which is the largest electronic voting machine company. They were paid $80,000 by the GOP in Utah to run their primary. And these are people who have a list of countries throughout Central and South America and the Philippines where they've been accused of rigging elections. I think it was in the Philippines or either in Mexico's Tabasco region, one of those two places where they've been accused of rigging the elections. They lost 24% of the vote, just disappeared, and there were no tracking records for those votes. I mean, millions of votes just disappeared because of electronic voting. So there's a potential for incredibly massive fraud. You're absolutely right. And we have to be very concerned about this, and that's a real key part of this election. It's going to have to be a gigantic landslide, unquestionable landslide, in order for Donald Trump to win, or they're going to rig it. And if it is a landslide, they may go ahead and let him get in and figure they'll handle him in a different way. But that's I think is going to be a big factor.
And when you talk about voter fraud, there's this growing voice out there for people calling for this thing called the blockchain, which is basically a digital ledger. So like if you hear like your grandma, whoever we were just talking about, been dead for 10 years and they say she voted, you can go and check and actually see if your grandma voted or if they switched your vote around. And I think that's something, if we're going to keep the digital machines, that we should definitely look into.
Oh, absolutely. There's so many different ways they can rig the system. They can rig it with not having proper voter ID. They can rig it with the way they count and tabulate the votes, or when the custody of the votes that can be rigged at that point, when they report the votes from local areas. So that's every juncture of this thing can be rigged in one way or the other. And they fight any kind of accountability, anything that would make the system more secure, more honest. They fight it tooth and nail. That should tell you something. When they don't want to have photo ID, Jakari, it is not because they're trying to make it hard for black people to vote or punish any minority. They simply want to have their entry points for fraud. That's all there is to it.
All right, thank you so much, Ben. We have Joe Biggs now, I believe, standing by. He's ready to talk out there at a Bernie rally. Joe Biggs, are you ready? Who's that you're talking to there?
Okay. Say that again?
Joe Biggs, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
You're live.
Sorry. What's your name, sir? We're live right now.
My name is Alfred Pirovitz, and I'm here mostly to promote an environmental project that I have in Brentwood. I've taken control of about 1,300 square feet on the property belonging to the veterans, which is sublet to the post office, Carl Malden United States Postal Service station on Barrington Avenue near Sunset. It's a regenerative project to which I have added roughly 7 tons wet weight of coffee grounds, Starbucks, if you will.
So what are you out here for today? You like Bernie Sanders?
I like Bernie Sanders. I'm an environmentalist.
What was some of the stuff you were doing earlier?
Okay, rock and roll, and I do a lot of different stuff.
Well, let's hear it.
All right, it looks like
Interesting.
All right,
there's a Bernie Sanders supporter. He's feeling the burn as we're speaking right now. And I guess the only question would be, where is he feeling that burn?
All right. Thank you so much, Biggs.
That was important. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, so what we have right now, as you can see, there's more and more people starting to show up. They're actually...
You know what? I got to say, you got like doctors, lawyers, PhDs, and you picked the guy who's singing in the parking lot.
Well,
We've
let's talk to
actually
her.
talked to many of.
Why aren't you talking to people who actually
Let's talk to her.
about Bernie
Yeah.
We've actually been talking to people. You just showed up at the wrong time. But thank you
Yeah.
for your opinion.
Well, thank you for not doing your job.
I am doing my
Well,
job.
hey,
I voted for Trump.
ask her if she's got some of those special PhD credentials. She can talk to us.
You're interviewing anyone?
Hey, so why are you here today?
I'm here because I'm in support of Bernie Sanders for president of the United States.
So one of the issues he's running on is he wants to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. How's that going to work out?
Well, how's it going to work out? I'm not sure I understand.
I mean, how is it going to work out? Because, you know, a lot of these different companies, they have now brought in robots to run stuff. You have different fast food networks.
That's definitely true. That's definitely true. And the economy's changing, and it makes it very difficult for a lot of people who work a full-time amount of time during the week, like 40 hours plus in a week. It makes it very hard for them to support themselves when incomes have been dropping over the last few years. It's very difficult to support a family on less than $15 an hour, even at 40 hours a week. So Bernie's message of being of believing that you should be able to survive on your own by working 40 hours a week. So
But I mean,
resonates with me.
but like an entry-level job, like at a fast food place, that is meant to motivate you to do something better on down the road. That shouldn't be a job that you settle at and you're using. I know some people have to have that job, but we should be promoting people to go into higher education. We should have people in welding jobs, things like that.
I agree with
Not
you.
saying you should stay, but that's what that promotes when you do the $15 an hour.
I totally agree with you that I think everyone who's in those jobs would agree with you that not everyone wants to work at McDonald's forever. That's a transitional job for them too. The problem is when they don't have the same economic opportunities, educational opportunities, when they're disenfranchised by the political system and they feel like they don't have someone who represents them, they don't have a good opportunity to move up
Hey, Joe.
using the kind of systems that by talking about. It seems
Yes.
like it's
Let's ask him on the trade issues. Yeah,
Ask about
I
what?
want to ask him on the trade issues. Bernie doesn't support the TPP and the TTIP.
But I'm happy to stay for another
Hey,
second.
he wants to know about the TPP. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that the TPP represents a project that doesn't provide a sufficient amount of benefit in American jobs to outweigh the potential environmental disaster that could come with it. And so I think that it has value, that I do understand why the right believes in it, but I think that the potential consequences of it far outweigh what the benefits are. So that's why and like Bernie.
Do you think that war has created climate change?
Do I think war? I think if you're in war, it's probably rough weather, if that's what you mean. But I don't think war necessarily creates. I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, I've heard a lot of people, Bernie Sanders supporters, that say that these wars have created climate change and it's helped escalate that.
I don't think that the act of fighting in a war is something that would necessarily contribute to climate change, but the military-industrial complex that leads to the consumption of fossil fuels and the wars that are predicated on the need for fossil fuels, that ultimately does contribute to climate change. And so in that sense, I wouldn't call it a one-to-one direct correlation, but I think there is a connection there. I think it's fair to say. I wouldn't say that's the main environmental level.
Joe, ask him, tell him that we agree with him on the trade issues, and ask him if he doesn't think that maybe the jobs that have been lost for NAFTA would be exactly the kind of jobs that would help people to move up from these minimum wage jobs.
I think you guys are doing a great job, by the way.
living.
I'm not here to argue. I do have to get out here just to get in line in a second, but I'm happy to answer another question if you'd like.
Yeah.
Ask him if he doesn't agree that NAFTA has taken away the kind of jobs that we want people to have so that we don't have to mandate a minimum
wage. You agree that NAFTA
wage.
has taken away the kind of jobs that we would want to have?
I think that NAFTA offers the opportunity for companies in America to sell their goods abroad in a way that they couldn't do without NAFTA. But the trade-off is that those companies don't have the same kind of worker protections that we do. So they end up getting away with being able to, pennies on the dollar, have a workforce that's very inexpensive, like you see in China and the Philippines and Taiwan and Mexico. And so as a result, the NAFTA has been a disaster for American workers because they can't compete with countries who are essentially cheating. So NAFTA in that sense has been terrible for the American worker, but excellent for American big business. So it's not inherently good or bad. It's just that's what happens because of it. And Bernie represents the workers, and as a result, Bernie is not pro-NAFTA. He's not pro-trade agreement. So I think I am also pro-worker. I am a worker. So
what about Bernie not really ever working until he's about 40 years old?
Well, Bernie, I would argue that Bernie being in politics is a job, and that he has been trying to represent working people through that job for a very long time, and that resonates with me. I think that that's a sign of good leadership.
I mean, I can't represent professional football players. I've never been one.
Well, I mean, that's true. I will represent them how? I mean, what represent?
I mean, how could he represent workers if he never really worked?
I think that when we say workers, it's more about